go drop like rain, nigga, watch me hit those trees.
Yo gang, what's up? I've been thinking a lot about the forest of death lately, and it's for a few reasons, but the biggest one and the main topic for this video is that the forest of death was actually pretty easy to complete. And before you disagree with me, let's just look at the full scope of what we know about the forest of death, starting from within and working our way out to the forest itself as a training location in Konoha. Starting at the center with the only exception to this premise, Team 7. The main team we follow throughout the first part of the series, and Naruto, Sasuke, and especially Sakura have a bad time in the Forest of Death. But not only do they have the worst time of any team barring the ones who died, they are the only Konoha team to actually encounter trouble that they couldn't handle or evade. So much so that they end up needing help from 3 different teams on separate occasions. If Kabuto hadn't showed up and stopped Naruto from opening one of the scrolls, they would have been disqualified immediately. If Lee hadn't shown up, Team 7 would have died to the Sound team, and if Shikamaru's squad didn't show up, Team 7 and Lee would be dead from the Sound team. So Naruto, Sasuke, and especially Sakura were having such a terrible go at it that they dragged members from 3 different teams into also having bad encounters. And had they not been there, those teams would have never encountered a serious threat the way that Team 7 did. And crazy thing is, Naruto and Sasuke end up fighting and winning matches against opponents who made it through easy. And Sakura tied with an opponent who was just as tired as she was and probably had way less chakra, because Ino used the mind transfer jutsu on one of the Sound Ninja to save Sakura, but whatever. For those of you saying we don't know what anyone else's time in the forest looked like because we didn't get to see it, that's exactly my point. There was nothing interesting going on with Hinata's team, and after the encounters with Team 7, there was nothing interesting for Lee's team or Ino's. By the time they make it to the tower, Lee is fully recovered from his prior loss to the Sound Ninja, and Ino's team shows up fine if not a little dirty. And they all go on to compete pretty aggressively despite having done a 3-day trek through what is named the Forest of Death. But I honestly think that's just a name, and that at the very highest, without a wild Orochimaru running around, I think the Forest of Death caps out at high Genin, meaning any Chunin, even a low-level one, is doing the forest like a cakewalk, because even the giant snake Naruto encounters is a product of Orochimaru, and if Orochimaru wasn't there, the snake wouldn't have been. And that in itself would have dropped the danger of the forest by a third from our point of view, because without that giant snake, what other natural threats do we see in the forest? None that I can think of, and even if the snake was natural and not associated with Orochimaru, the only other threats we see are the other ninja in the forest. Gaara was the most dangerous thing in that forest at that point, barring Orochimaru, which, what if they would have crossed paths? Sheesh. But even then, Gaara only encountered 2 teams, and only one even had any interaction with the Sand team. They shattered Itachi's record, and a slightly more trained but just fought Neji Naruto goes on to beat Gaara full on, even breaks out of his sand coffin, so it's not like Gaara was invincible. He walked through the Forest of Death like that because it wasn't that difficult to begin with. And to broaden my theory a bit, if you could call it that, if the Forest of Death is in Konoha, at the very least it's on the outskirts of the least village, but either way, it's close enough that civilians can make it there fairly easy, which brings me back to my earlier statement that the Forest of Death is just a name, and it's just there to deter villagers and civilians from going in just in case they have no combat skills at all. And there's something to be said about how the exams went on regardless of what was happening, because with the exception of Anko, after learning Orochimaru was running around, even the Hokage wasn't worried anybody would die. And if they're using it as a training grounds, I'd bet it's just to simulate being at war or out in the field for long periods of time. And going back into the forest for a second, the tower in the middle of the forest is pretty intact and upkept. It even has a big screen digital display, so it's being used, at least some. And that being the case, you can't afford to lose ninja en route to something trivial in your own village. So in reality, the forest couldn't be that dangerous just for the purpose of use. Which brings me to my final point. The forest isn't even as big as it's made out to be, because there is a large fence around it and the teams all start at different points around the forest. And even if the gates weren't around the entire perimeter, Gaara's team finishes in less than 2 hours with a leisurely walking pace. that means that the time limit on the test was almost foolproof. You'd probably actually have to not do anything at all for the entire time to go over the limit. And even then, we've determined that the forest is so small, you'd probably encounter another team just from sitting around. And if you beat them, there's a 50-50 chance you'll have the scroll you need. So short of dying or purposely not going to the tower, even an incompetent team of Guinean can make it out of the forest okay and even pass the test pretty easy. But hey, that's the video. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, and comment. And if you particularly enjoyed this video, check out some of my others. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, peace.
That thunder on me clap, make a nigga think before he act. Have a nigga dying on his back, then we double back. Shooters leaving rubber where you at, that's why niggas never wanna match.